when we did the baseline study, we probably GPSed 25 sites on that ranch. And then we went to those sites and took pictures all the way around, 360 degrees, took pictures of that site. And then we developed a specification. When they come with their monitor visit, they got their specification, they got the pictures we took last year. We go to those sites, we look, is it still being carried on that way? So it's really easy to do. And they really do a slick job, and it's not very time consuming once you do that. Or they find something not going right, they may want to have their lawyer go to court and get a restraining order to stop that building that's being built that wasn't in the specifications, or whatever the case might be.
What are the fees connected with that?
I'm sorry?
What are the fees connected with that?
The fees connected with that, and that's what Brent was talking about, is the endowment. I'll give you my personal experience, okay? Each is unique to your own financial situation. You're going to have upfront costs, and I won't, and Thomas is going to go into that detail. But what you are doing by putting it in conservation easement, you are giving up, potentially, depending upon how much land you have and what those two appraisals have, a significant amount of money versus what you could go sell it to a developer. So that's why you're getting a considerable reduction in your federal income tax. Of course, that assumes you're paying tax. You're not going to get something back you didn't pay in. But in the first year, we got enough back, personal story, unique, everyone's unique, we got enough back to cover our initial costs that we had to pay the lawyers, the appraisers, and to get everything set up. So from the next 15 more years, it's 16 total, and that may change with future legislation, but right now it's still up to that point. You get that much back from your federal income tax every year. And what we do is we take a percentage of that I gladly pay every year to the Civil and Nature Conservancy for their work to manage the land, have the endowment, and have the legal defense fund that Brett talked about in case they need to have a lawyer come out and enforce the specifications. I'm not a lawyer, so I said it just right.
You did fine.
Tom will straighten me out when he gets that turn. And this one's been covered, number 8. If your heirs want to sell the land, so be it. With conservation easement and how to manage its states. So that's always it. Number 9. We in the United States, especially us in Texas, don't have enough green space. And I know, probably speaking to the choir, you wouldn't even be here. But as much land as we have in Texas, so little of it is owned by the state. We just don't have much green space. So you're taking your one little step to help in that area, and that's why as development increases and as a drain on our resources, such as water, and we all know what our situation is there, is happening, you're seeing more and more governments that are helping and looking at ways they can promote that conservation of our land and to put it into a situation that won't be developed so that the whole state doesn't end up being a city 100 years from now. So it does give you, from standpoint of looking at eminent domain and things like that, like Brent said, it's not going to stop it altogether, but they would certainly, in many cases, go out of their way to not destroy something that has been set up to be preserved. The ecology and preservation, is taking off as we speak, and I know I'm speaking to the choir on that probably. The last one, it's a matter of satisfaction. I played on that ranch when I was young. I got a great deal of enjoyment out of it. And as I was out there today, I was thinking, this is wonderful. Those trees, that clearing, that creek when it does run, when we get rain, and all those things. They're going to be there. They're going to be there. They're going to be there. They're not going away. They're not. So I'm probably over my time, but I'm very passionate about this. I think that's the one thing that we can leave that's lasting. Everything else will be changed after we're gone. There'll be other people that come around and do things a lot better than we did. But what you specify in there is not going anywhere. That's a forever thing. So, thank you all.
Thank you, Ken. Point presentation here. So if you wanted to kind of follow along, bouncing wall as we go through this. point out a couple other things that are in here. This is the Texas Parks and Wildlife Guide to Conservation Easements. It's a little outdated. It doesn't have some of the latest stuff, but it has a lot of great information. And it has the stories of ranches too, so I would commend that to you. And this little handout is Conservation Easements, a brief overview. This is something you can take a look at. Kind of is more narrative, and it also talks about some of the latest changes in the law to update the Texas Parks and Wildlife piece. And finally, there's a little success story, a project that I worked on, a ranch over by Wimberley that was protected, so commend that to you. All right, so Brent, you ready to hit it?
Yep, let me power up here.
You might have to move something out of the way of this thing.
On the table here for me, we'll see how this goes. It'll take a second to warm up.
If we're a law firm outside of Austin and Dripping Springs, and happy to be here tonight. I do a lot of work with conservation easements. Our firm specializes in this particular area of the law. And this past year, we've done a lot of work. People are scrambling to do these transactions before the end of the year because, as might have been mentioned, the law is going to be changing at the end of this year. We're not quite sure what's going to happen in 2010. So that kind of creates a backdrop for my talk, and I'll touch base on that as we go along. I'm going to roll through these slides fairly quickly, presuming that you have had some background already with Ken speaking. But let me just say, to begin with, conservation easement, voluntary legal agreement. So it's something in writing. This is a conservation easement I did in Colorado years ago when I worked there and did projects as well. You can see it's pretty thick, right? There's a lot in here. This was a particular easement that we did over a 3-year period. So again, that just points out the flexible nature that we can use to do that kind of transaction, and there were legitimate reasons to do it that way. In Colorado, they've got a tax credit. So you could actually get money from the state of Colorado if you put an easement on your land. We took it in 3 bites. That made sense. So it's signed by both parties, the owner of the land and the land trust. It's filed in the courthouse. What it does, it kind of creates a partnership. And I don't mean this in an official legal way, but you're basically finding a long-term caregiver for the land, all right? So part of my job as a professional advising landowners, and that's what we do exclusively, is to find the match, to make the match for you. And the reason is because in Texas there's about 49 different land trusts, okay? Some are very regional, very specific what they're interested in. Some are statewide, some are national, some are international. So we like to find the best match for you. The land trust is going to look at your land with a particular point of view, and in many ways they're going to see the land similar to you do because you're interested in preserving it. But in some ways, if they have a particular bias, that might not meet your particular needs. For example, if you had Ducks Unlimited look at your land, they might look at it differently than somebody else who's trying to preserve some other part of the property, okay? So that's part of that matchmaking that we go through with our clients initially to help you develop the best relationship with the best land trust to start off with. Because you're going to be accomplishing your own goals, but also the goals of the land trust through this conservation easement. It permanently restricts certain development uses on the land. There are term easements, 10, 20, 30 years, that are available under the Texas statute, but we don't find people going for those very often because they don't provide the federal tax incentives that a permanent conservation easement provides. All right, next slide. So how do these things work? Well, the traditional example is that your property that you own, you don't really own the land, okay? Nobody owns the land. What you own are legal rights to the land, okay? That's the bundle of sticks that my law professor told me about in property class. So you own these different rights associated with it. You can take certain rights out of that bundle and park them with the land trust. This is the right to develop the property, okay? They are, by their organizational documents, duty-bound never to exercise those rights. Their job is to protect those rights, okay? So you don't have to worry about that. The development rights are parked there. So you're taking a stick or two out of the bundle and handing it off to an organization that's going to presumably